All right, we are back with another episode of App Stories. I'm John Voorhees, and with me today is a very special guest for the first part of the show, which is Alex Guyot. Hey, Alex.
How's it going, John?
Very good. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by SourceGraph and Instabug. If you're wondering where Federico is, he's a little under the weather. He's got a bit of a sore throat and cough, so we gave him the day off because we want to talk to Alex about watchOS today. And we're also going to have another segment at the end, which Federico did get a chance to participate in before he was getting sick, which is with Myke Hurley, who's going to talk to us about tvOS. But before we get to that, Alex, I do want to provide a little update about the very end of Automation April. We have declared the winners of the Automation April Shortcuts Contest. We have a list of 6 winners. I'm going to run through them real quickly to let everybody know who won. We picked 6 different categories. The first one is Best Everyday Shortcut, which is Meme Maker, a fantastic shortcut for creating memes that is created by Dylan Mock. The next one is the Best HomeKit Shortcut, and Brian Martin did a shortcut called What Should We Wear, which takes the temperature data from a HomeKit temperature sensor and converts it into what is really just plain English, easy to understand instructions about what you should be wearing based on what the temperature is outside. For the Best Mac Shortcut, we have Snap from Om Shashad. Snap is a Mac-only shortcut that lets you move your windows around and divide them up into halves and thirds and quarters. The same kind of thing you'd see from an app like Moom or Magnet or that sort of thing, but all done entirely with Native Shortcuts app. Really cool shortcut. The next one was the Best Media Shortcut, which is iPod Shuffle by Nathaniel Dott. And this is a great shortcut for creating a playlist of randomly selected songs from your music library. It's got some filters in there so you can tweak, things like how recent the song was added to your library, how many times you've skipped it, that sort of thing. But fantastic shortcut there. For the Best Productivity Shortcut, we have ChoreBot by Chris Barlow. And ChoreBot is a way to track chores around the house. Things like, vacuuming or making your bed or things like that, where you can both log completed tasks to the calendar app as all-day events or add them to reminders. And then as you log things in calendar that happen to be in reminders, it checks them off automatically in reminders. So really nice integration there between calendar and reminders. And then finally, for the best overall shortcut, we had Join Zoom Meeting by Jack Wellborn. Jack's shortcut is a really nice shortcut for starting a Zoom meeting because what it does is it takes out all the clicking around and opening up your calendar to click on the URL, and it eliminates the orphaned tabs that you get when you do that in Safari. It just opens right up into your Zoom meeting and you can get going. And it does that by looking at your calendar schedule. So fantastic shortcut there. You can read all about these and download them on macstories.net. We also have 7 more that are terrific shortcuts that it didn't quite make the winner for a category, but are also excellent shortcuts that we have in there. 7 of these shortcuts that span a whole variety of genres. With that out of the way, Alex, let's talk about watchOS because, this is last year I was going back through your review and it's like, oh, yeah, I forgot how very little was changed last year with watchOS 8. So after I went through your watchOS 8 review, I went through your watchOS 7 review because that one was a little beefier. But I think there's a lot of things to talk about here, but I think I want to start by talking about watch faces, which to me are very, very frustrating because I feel like that the old ones are neglected and the new ones are more decorative than useful. Is that fair?
I completely agree.
I'm still using the Infograph Modular. That's been my favorite one since, the Series 3, whenever it was introduced. Mm-hmm. And I want to be careful not to overstate my
I think that was the Series 4. That was when the screen got bigger.
Right, exactly. So since the Series 4.
And I'm on the standard Infograph. They had good watch faces that year, and I feel like I agree with you. That was about the last year that they've had particularly good watch faces.
Yeah, I mean, there's some nice decorative ones, nice colors. I like a lot of the Pride ones, sure. But there are also some weird ones, like the artist ones. I was looking at your screenshots of those again today, and I was like, don't know if I've ever seen those out in the wild.
I still kind of like those artist faces. I tried to fun behind the scenes. I tried to put a GIF of the weird artist face transforming on the header of my watchOS review. I think it was either last year or the year before. And Federico hates those, and he banned me from putting that in the header.
I remember that now. Yeah, I think that was 7. I don't think that was 8. But yeah, so they're decorative, but I don't, the oldest ones have some of them have been tweaked over the years, more recent years, but they haven't really evolved much. Too many of them are based on actual watches when what you've got is a square computer on your wrist. I think that I'd like to see this year, my wish, I guess, since this is the wishes episode, is for more functional watch faces. And by that, I mean something along the lines of the infograph modular, something that gives me more information about the apps that I'm using and the notifications and other things that I can get glanceable information about on my watch.
Yep. I totally agree. I am someone who tends to keep an analog style watch face, but the reason that I like the infograph one is because even though it kind of has the analog look, which I kind of like, it still is pretty packed with complications.
True.
And so it still has a lot of utility. It really annoys me that, there's multiple other watch faces that are analog that I think look really nice, but they are just starved for complications. Apple just, wants them to be these beautiful, pristine interfaces and thus won't put any complications on them, or only puts like 3 or something. And I just don't feel like that. It's just wasting so much functionality. Like, you have a computer watch on your wrist. You should be able to use it for, computer things like apps.
And it's a theme, I think, throughout a lot of this watchOS stuff, which is it really tends, and this is true of my use tends towards getting notifications to see what's going on and tracking workouts. And beyond that, I did not update to the latest Apple Watch this year. It's the first time I've not owned the latest Apple Watch, and I haven't really missed it because I think maybe part of it's the pandemic, the fact that I've been home more and maybe had less need for that sort of on-the-go information. I think that's definitely part of it. Maybe it's just that I've fallen out of the habit of trying to do more with my watch, but it really has become more a notification and fitness thing more than anything else. And I haven't really felt like there's been a feature that's new enough that really has compelled me to use my watch in a different way. And I guess that's a way of kind of wishing for more watch-specific functionality. I feel like as I looked through your reviews, so much of what we've gotten in the last couple of years have been extensions of new features and things like the iPhone, but not really standalone watch features.
Yep, exactly. Honestly, writing these reviews is almost getting boring at this point, just because I feel like I'm practically writing the same review every year. It's just like, okay, couple new watch faces, couple updates to apps, maybe one new first-party app, usually one that probably no one is hardly ever going to use. I don't know, like 1 or 2 minor features. There just hasn't been a lot going on in watchOS land for honestly a few years at this point. And, on the one hand, it's nice that the watch has hit a point where it's a little more stable. The early years were really all over the place, and it's good that they got out of that. But one of the things that I liked about the early years of the Apple Watch is that they hadn't settled on really just kind of going hard on fitness and health. And they were actually experimenting with all of these kind of more technical, or more, not even technical, but just like the fact that there's a computer on your wrist. And they're like, okay, what can we do with a computer on your wrist? It's kind of like the old, like having a calculator watch, decades ago, where it's like, yeah, we could calculate things on our wrist, like weird things right. Like that, where, yeah, no, it's not really the main use case for this thing, but it's fun. It's cool that you can do things like this.
Yeah, remember when there were the circles of your contacts that you could,
Exactly. That one always comes to mind. I actually enjoyed that interface. Ultimately, especially back then, it was so like input into the watch was so bad back then. And I think it's a little better. I'm actually still on the Series 5 watch, so I don't have the nice full-size keyboard of the Series 7, which I think was probably the main interesting feature on the Series 7.
Yeah, I agree.
Super care about the extended screen again. But the fact that it was big enough that they could fit a full-size keyboard on it is really, really interesting. I think that opens up some more, potential use cases. But I think Apple over the last few years has leaned away from all of those potential use cases. They don't really seem to be outputting features where they want you to be typing anything into the watch. And again, not that I think that should be a primary use case, but I just kind of miss the days when they were at least experimenting with weird things like that. And like the I think it was the side button would open up that contacts interface with the circle of faces. That was a fun little interface. And and back then is when also you could swipe up from the bottom and see the now playing screen, which is I think my number one most missed feature from the early days of the Apple Watch or of watchOS at least. And, I think the shame is that you could probably go back a year ago and listen to our watchOS 7 or watchOS 8 wishlist episode last year. And everything that we say on that episode of App Stories is going to be the same.
It'll be similar. There's no doubt. No doubt.
I don't think they hit any of the things.
Yeah, I think you're right. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by SourceGraph. So you've hired a brilliant developer. That's great, but now you've got to get them onboarded. If your company is growing, onboarding new developers will be a common occurrence, but it's also a big undertaking every time. One of the biggest challenges for new hires is to get up to speed with the project that their new team is working on. This can be tricky if the code bases that your developers are working on are already large. Thankfully, SourceGraph makes it easy to move fast, even in those big code bases. Developers know that knowledge is most useful when it's findable. Centralization is helpful, but given the fact that most companies store knowledge in at least 2 different locations, how do you make knowledge accessible to those who need it? As a code intelligence platform, SourceGraph gives developers what they need to drive their own learning over time and in different situations. Teams without SourceGraph need to rely on asking colleagues and reviewing out-of-date documentation, which is cumbersome and time-consuming. But with SourceGraph, every developer can search across millions of repositories and find specific code, saving time for themselves and everyone else. So when questions do come up, you know it's the big stuff that's worthy of extra time. SourceGraph was created to make developers' lives easier, and today they work with leading companies across every industry, including 3 out of 5 of the top tech companies, plus PayPal, Uber, Plaid, GE, Reddit, and Atlassian. Visit about.sourcegraph.com to learn more. That's about.sourcegraph.com to find out why some of the biggest tech companies in the world use SourceGraph and to see what it can do for yours. Or just click the link in the show notes to let them know that you heard about them from us. Our thanks to SourceGraph for their support of the show. Talk to me a little bit about sleep tracking, because I know you wrote about this in your last review, that you're not super pleased with how that works from your standpoint.
No, I mean, the number one issue that I have with Apple's sleep tracking implementation is that it only works on a schedule.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. The sleep tracking apps that were out years before Apple released their own all work automatically. I cannot believe that Apple still, I think we're either 2 or 3 years into Apple having sleep on the watch, and they still don't have automatic sleep tracking, which just seems so easy and straightforward to me to set up. And for me, I just, I don't have a scheduled job. Like, we just kind of work, whenever and also kind of all the time. But our schedules are not set in stone at all. And I tend to take advantage of that. And my sleep schedule is kind of all over the place. My girlfriend is a nurse and she switches back and forth from day shift to night shift. And I tend to switch with her too on that. And so like my schedule is just not something that you can set up in the Apple Watch settings and be like, yeah, on this day I'm going to be, awake at 9 a.m. and go to sleep at 11 or whatever they want you to do. My life doesn't work like that. And I would maybe actually use Apple Watch sleep tracking if they would just let me, automatically track it. But for some reason, they still won't. So maybe this year, that is a big wish list item for watchOS 9, is that they would add that. It really should be pretty straightforward.
I would think so. It feels like a little bit of a weird crutch to have it schedule-based. I mean, it's obviously more accurate if, in fact, you keep to a schedule, but that is awfully restrictive for a lot of people like yourself, and I know Federico especially, too. And I don't know. I mean, between things like heart rate, breathing rate, which was recently added to watchOS, there are a lot of indicators of whether somebody is asleep or not that I think that they could do a pretty good job with an algorithm for that. Let's, I guess, talk a little bit about some of the things that the Apple Watch does well and that could be refined, though, because I want to talk a little bit about fitness, because there are a few things about it that drive me a little bonkers, and maybe we're going to stray a little bit here beyond just watchOS itself and into things like the Fitness app and Fitness Plus. But one of the things that I don't like is that I'm constantly told that I can still do it and get my stand count or my calories as I'm lying down to go to bed. Yes, I could still do it if I stayed up for another half hour, but I'm literally going to bed. And in fact, because I do use that sleep schedule thing for sleep tracking, it knows that I'm going to bed. And it's probably unlikely that I'm going to get up and start doing laps around the house to get my last, a couple hundred steps in. So I'd like that to be a little smarter. I also would like to see the fitness tracking and insights to go a little bit beyond graphs and maybe have some sort of more narrative suggestions for what you can do to improve your health, or maybe tie some of those graphs into maybe to increase your calorie burn for the following week. Maybe you should try this HIIT workout on Fitness Plus. I mean, there are ways for Apple to do it and also promote their services where they tie these things together a little more tightly and actually come up with a sort of program for you on the fly that is more than just here are a bunch of charts about whether you're trending up or trending down. Here are also some actionable steps you can take if you want to increase your endurance or maybe increase your strength or whatever it happens to be.
Right. Do you remember a few years ago that like trend program that I wrote about on Mac Stories? And they had just kind of launched that, and it seemed, Activity Trends. I just found it. It was from 2019 in iOS 13. This was introduced, and it was kind of the goal of that was supposed to be basically exactly what you just said, except it was the early initial version of it, and it does some light monitoring and kind of gives you some general recommendations for how to improve your health and fitness. But I mean, maybe I haven't paid as much attention, but I don't think that has received almost any like large updates since then. It has kind of stayed at the same level of like, it's nice, but it hasn't gotten like significantly better. And I feel like in 3 years that could have transformed into a whole thing. Like they could have done all kinds of stuff with that base idea.
I think a little bit of one of the problems too is that things are compartmentalized where there's health data in the health app, and then there's charts on your watch or in the fitness app. And the things aren't always tied together super well in terms of integration and surfacing that. I mean, I don't know about you, Alex. I don't go into the health app a lot.
No.
and there's a lot in there. And you're right. There are things in there. There's some editorial content. There's some suggestions for you and that kind of thing. I feel like some of that needs to come out of that app and into places where I'm using the fitness app because I'm working out, and it'd be good to see those suggestions in there instead of having to go to the health app.
Right. They should be integrated into the actual workouts that the watch knows you're running regularly.
Right. Exactly. All right. All right. What else should we talk about? One of my favorites, of course, is the home app, which I know you're not a fan of like the algorithmic things at the top where they now suggest scenes and things for you to turn on. And I do see why that's problematic, especially for, I think you said it was a problem because you've just got a handful of lights in your apartment. And so you don't have things to really put up there so much.
Well, I mean, John, I only have like 9 lights in here, and mostly I turn on and off the same set of them, and that thing never shows me those lights.
Oh, it doesn't?
Well, I mean, every once in a while, but it like cycles through, like it's different all the time. I don't know. I don't even look at it that often these days. But when I was trying to test this, I was looking in there, and it was just, it would show me like my bedroom light that I never control from the home app. And I'm just like, why is this here? I just turn that on and off manually.
Right. Well, I had a little bit more luck with those options at the top, but I do still think that the tiles are not a good solution on the watch because they're just too big and chunky. And if you have more than a couple of things in the home app, it's a very long list to get, down to the ones that you want. So I feel like, that's just a UI that I think Apple's done a good job overall with the home app and making, especially on iOS, making it better over time. But I still feel like it's not quite there because those tiles just don't scale very well. They're fine on the Mac or on the iPad. They're okay on the iPhone, and they're terrible on the watch. So
right.
It just needs to be different.
Yeah, I do agree with you that in terms of the design of those little icons at the top, those are way better than the giant tiles that are underneath them. And I think that it should be more or less all those little icon shapes. I just feel like I would love to be able to manually choose which little tiny icons show up and what order, and then I can just know it's going to be there every single time.
Right. All right. What else do you have for us, Alex?
Well, while we're on the idea of these full screen tiles, I think that applies all over the watch. The music app and the podcast app are huge issues with this, where it's, they have this, it's like an album cover interface where they want it to look like you're swiping through albums. And it's these full screen, interfaces that you have to scroll through in order to get to the actual list at the top. And I don't know, I just feel like it makes those apps pretty useless for me. I don't know how you feel about those, but I just want small icons everywhere. I want a grid of icons all over watchOS that let me pick from like 9 different things at once that should be able to fit on this screen if they just shrink everything down. That I just think the watch as a whole everything could feel so much faster if you didn't have to do so much scrolling through giant tiles.
Yeah, I think as a result of that UI, especially for things like music, I've really limited what music I have on my watch because, I keep a couple of playlists synced to the watch just so it's easy when I go out for a run or something to listen to something with my headphones. But I don't put a lot on there because once you do, you've got too many of those cards to flip through. And related to that is I still feel like third-party audio apps are a little rough around the edges, not through any fault of the third-party developers, but because the APIs are just still not there. I feel like it's still too fiddly to get podcasts in particular onto a watch from an app like either Overcast or Castro or Pocket Cast for that matter. I don't do it as much as I used to. Part of that's because my knee's injured and I haven't been out exercising or walking around a whole lot. On the other hand, I have kind of started to do more with just listening to music when I go out for a jog or something because I know at least that stuff is kind of going to be there and I can just shuffle it and enjoy it that way.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the last thing that I would mention is just something that I talked a lot about last year that was a little aspirational, but I continue to feel like it should be possible, which is I just keep coming back to how you used to swipe the now playing screen up from the bottom and how much more useful that was than the control center, which again, I actually like the control center interface on the Apple Watch. I just don't think it necessarily deserves that place of honor that it has. Or at least I just think there should be more access. Because like last year we talked about maybe swiping from either side could just bring up a third-party app that you choose, or swiping up from the bottom. And I continue to think that would just be such a great way to use the watch to get access to my most used apps on here and actually make it a lot faster to start to get into a particular app and use it. And, I miss that now playing screen, and it could be just like that, where you swipe up from the bottom and you've just swiped an app in, and it doesn't have to be now playing. It could be whatever app you want. And then you could even swipe side to side and get that too. I personally don't think having watch faces be on the side to side swipe is particularly useful. I think, you can always still just long tap and switch between watch faces. And I think they should use those swipe in from the side gestures for something that would be a lot more useful to watchOS. So I still think that's a really good idea. I don't really have any hope that we're going to see something like that, but I think it would be really nice and just actually get me to use a lot more third-party apps, maybe, because presumably they would also get, better entitlements and be able to keep more up to date regularly. So you could swipe them in and they would already be ready to go.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I think your idea of having smaller iconography throughout and having that sort of thing makes a lot of sense. And from a customization standpoint, maybe coupling that with something like the ability to pin things in different views, whether it's your home screen or whether it's the swipe up and you have multiple apps or something that you can get to quickly in like a little drawer or something like that, and being able to pin the ones that you want there would go a long way, because I do think that, the watch is a powerful device, but I think most people probably only use it with a handful of apps at any one time. And as a result, being able to pin 3, 4, 5 things into an interface that you can get to quickly would go an awful long way.
Yep. And I know they do have the like little app tray on the side, like the multitasking thing, but it just has the same problem of that giant card scrolling interface. I never want to deal with that interface. Like every time I open it, I'm like, I got this thing. I got to like scroll through all these. I don't think that is a good design pattern, and it is all over the watch, and I want them to remove it everywhere.
Yeah, if you have to stop in the middle of your jog to scroll through the apps to find what you want, there's something wrong. That's kind of my rule of thumb, because I always have to do that when I have to go through one of those UIs. All right, Alex. Well, I hope that with the new watch this fall, the rumors are that we're going to get new sensors and maybe some other new hardware features that hopefully will drive new features of watchOS and apps and that sort of thing, system apps. So maybe we'll get some things that are unexpected, but it'd be nice to see Apple work on some of these wishes as well.
Yep, I hope so. I would love to have something to actually dig into for real on this year's watchOS review. All
right. Well, I hope I'll remind you of that when you're suffering through an extra long watch review this year.
Good point.
Well, all right, Alex. Thanks for joining me today. Up next is Federico and Myke, who will join me to talk about tvOS. Talk to you later, Alex.
See you, John.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Instabug. Building mobile apps presents challenges. Bugs, crashes, and performance issues can be a nightmare for developers. But what if I told you that you could not only detect all of those issues, but also get a holistic understanding of the quality of your app from your user's point of view? Instabug's lightweight SDK grabs all of the insights you need to build top-quality apps. Through comprehensive bug and crash reports, performance monitoring, and real-time user feedback, all in one SDK. With Instabug, you can continuously monitor and measure the performance of your app as perceived by your users. Empower your users to report issues and ask questions seamlessly from right inside your app. Get all of the information you need about bugs, crashes, and other issues, and get them fixed in record time, all with a focus on privacy and security. And you don't need to worry about the hassles of switching to a new tool. It only takes a minute to integrate Instabug into your app, and it fits right within your workflow, with support for Jira, Slack, Trello, GitHub, Zendesk, and over 10 other popular tools. Join over 25,000 top mobile developers around the world who use Instabug to ship high-quality apps. Go to try.instabug.com/appstories today to learn more. Again, that's try.instabug.com/appstories. Our thanks to Instabug for their support of the show. Federico, we have saved the very best OS for last today.
Yes.
tvOS. And I don't know. It's the biggest OS. It's the most important OS.
Biggest OS. And we thought for the most important biggest OS, why not also have a very special guest? I should say an expert. I should say maybe one of the key figures in the tvOS ecosystem. Welcome to the show, Myke Hurley, tvOS expert.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm very happy to be here. I feel like I've been given quite a task.
Yes.
Because
you have.
My understanding, you guys are very professional. You record in advance because I've only heard one of your OS wish list so far. So I'm assuming, am I the only guest for this series?
Well, no, there's going to be someone else, but
okay.
You will not be the only guest. But as long as you brought your knowledge today, I think you'll be fine.
So, Federico, is a bit of behind the scenes for App Stories listeners. Federico came to me and was like, would you like to do this? And I said yes, and then was like, oh, God, I got to come up with some stuff. Because let me tell you, boys, tvOS, whilst I'm, of course, the preeminent expert of tvOS, comprehensively reviewing tvOS for multiple years, connected on Relay
on an
FM,
annual basis, yes.
On an annual basis, as everyone knows, putting in them hours, putting in that work. Quite mature operating system, I'll say, for tvOS.
You could say it's almost perfect. You could say it's perfect, Myke,
that.
Couldn't you?
However, I bring five features. Five features that I would like to see added to tvOS.
I just thought we'd be done in 2 minutes. Maybe just have one thing, but no, okay.
I put the work in. As everyone knows who listens to my tvOS reviews, I could pull a lot of content out of tvOS, let me tell you that.
Right. And obviously you've been thinking about these wishes. I assume that, in your mind, you also have this concept, for how these features will look. You really
Oh, yeah, I've got it all drawn out. It's got whiteboards all over the place in here.
Incredible. So let's get started. What's the first thing you want to see in tvOS 16, I guess, will be?
Yes. So what I'm looking for here, which I think actually fits WWDC pretty nicely, I have a couple of things that are user features, and then there are a couple of things which are changes that Apple would need to make just to the way that tvOS works to better integrate with their partners.
Okay.
Because I do think as well, like, if you guys would agree with me, tvOS is definitely the operating system which I think Apple has to do more partnerships with to really kind of get what they're looking for.
Right.
And we've heard tell of many sweetheart deals that some video streaming services have been given to make sure that they support tvOS properly. And I think Apple just need to give up some of their ideas about the way the TV app should be run to be able to include partners like Netflix in the TV app. As far as we're aware, one of the main sticking points for Netflix is data. That they want data on the users, right? And I think that Apple need to do what it takes to give Netflix what they need to make sure that they are in the TV app. Like, I think really the TV app itself should be exactly this, right? Every streaming service that you install on your Apple TV, plus some, content recommendations for maybe apps you want to get for different movies or whatever. It should all flow in here. If you are actively watching a show, it should be tracked and shown to you. Like the way that it works with Disney, the way that it works with, like I use Now TV here in the UK, like a lot of partners. It's like you can either add something to your up next queue, or once you started watching it, when that next episode's available, it pops up right there so you know it's there. I love that feature and have really come to rely on it, but not all of the content that I am consuming is in there. So like, we're watching Better Call Saul right now. I never remember what day of the week it's on because I have to keep going to Netflix to check it. With my other shows, they just pop up. I get a push notification on my phone. Hey, a new episode of whatever is available in the TV app. And it's also there when I need it. I think that, I would also like to see YouTube here somehow, but I think that seems more complicated. It's like just when I think about the services that I view. But when it comes to, the types of services that are already in the TV app, Netflix is the glaring omission. And I think Apple need to do what they need to do to make it work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, Myke. And I have something kind of related to that, which is I feel like with channels in particular, Apple's not doing a very good job of distinguishing between which channels you're actually subscribed to and which ones you aren't. I'd kind of like that TV app to really be, as you said, just a running list and status of every show and every service that I subscribe to. Now, I get that they want to promote some of this stuff through the TV app too, and that's fine, but I feel like it needs to be better differentiated so that that when you're looking at those round circles of various services that, oh yeah, I've got Paramount Plus and I've got, Disney Plus, but I don't have this other one. I don't have Showtime or whatever it happens to be. You're right too about especially Netflix. I mean, the minute that one major service is not included in the TV app, it just makes the whole thing feel kind of broken.
Yeah. And I will say that the landscape is different now to when Apple added the TV app and all of this stuff to tvOS. Netflix were much more dominant in the streaming landscape than they are now, but they are still an important part of it and will continue to be. I think I would assume most listeners here, if they subscribe to one service, they're also subscribed to Netflix, right? Like it has, for its faults in some ways, become kind of like the also-ran, but they are still an important part of the streaming puzzle.
Yeah, I love to see this. I have exactly the same problem. Having to switch between multiple queues is just not nice. So whatever is necessary to give that up. But I have like an actual integrated dashboard. Like that's what I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Because the data thing is interesting to me too, right? Because like when I'm using the Netflix app, they know what I'm doing. So
right.
Apple just need to find a way to give Netflix what they want to make that a thing.
No, because if you're not giving it to me, I'm still opening the Netflix app and I'm still using it. So you're not really protecting me anyway. You're just giving me a worse experience. So what's the second thing? Number 2.
So speaking of the up next queue, I would like some kind of system-wide button, maybe a button that Apple makes, to just add something directly to the up next queue. So it could be inside of apps themselves. Like, for example, if I see something in Disney Plus that I want to watch, I can press the plus button to add it to the queue inside of Disney Plus, but that's not what I want. So like frequently I will press play and then quit the viewer, and then it will be in my up next queue for me to resume. But what I would like is...
I do that all the time too.
There you go, right? Which is like such a stupid way of doing it.
It's a terrible hack, yeah.
Yeah. Even if you could ask Siri, like whatever, or maybe put another button on the remote. We'll have buttons on the remotes now. But yeah, what I would really like to see, I think of something like, say, do you remember the like, what's it called? Add to Siri shortcuts. Like when they made that button for when Siri shortcuts were introduced, right? Yes. They had like that system button. It makes me think of that. Like, give me a button that's maybe like like some kind of iconography that I can add something from inside of any app that supports the TV app to just add it directly to my up next queue. Yeah. If there's a way to currently do this, I don't know what it is. I've looked for it.
Or maybe even just
rather
a
than
gesture.
Just say something.
Like maybe even just like enable, like, I don't know, double click the click wheel or something. Like give me something like that that's an up next shortcut, Yeah. I never thought of it, but I do it all the time. Exactly what you described.
Yeah.
This is also
because sometimes like, I want to watch that. But again, because I don't spend a ton of time in all of the various apps that I use, right? Sometimes I'm like, I see something in Disney. I know I want to watch it, but I might not be back in Disney for like another week or so, at least. But there's still that thing there, and I would like to catch it, but I know I'm going to forget about it unless I keep seeing it in my face. And so that I like to add things to my up next queue. My third feature, the one I know you're going to love, Federico, widgets.
Ooh, widgets.
Let's put widgets on the Apple TV. So I think most people are at least a fan of a couple of their animated screensavers. I know that the underwater ones lost a lot of people. A lot of people like the underwater additions to the Apple TV screensaver.
Terrible. Just terrible.
But what if you could, instead of these screensavers, populate with widgets. You could have some kind of status board for your life, your family's lives, visible at a screen of your choosing for as long as you want. You could maybe put them on the home screen too, but I imagine you could have them just on the TV. You've got like maybe a photos widget, you've got a calendar widget, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you got your weather and
so
the weather, and you could integrate with the HomeKit too, which would be kind of nice.
First thing that comes to mind as a counter argument to that, but also I have a counter argument to my counter argument, is OLED burn-in is a problem. Like if you're leaving a static widget displayed all the time as a screensaver, like the reason why the screensavers exist and they are motion screensavers is you're not risking the burn-in on your OLED panel, right? That's the idea. But so that's potentially problematic to just leave a static image that doesn't change displayed on screen all the time. But that's also a limitation of WidgetKit 1.0. If we are expecting to see WidgetKit 2.0 this year in iOS 16, and if that new version of the WidgetKit framework enables interactions and motion and animations, well, that could also make your wish come true. Because at that point, you could say, you can show widgets on the Apple TV, even if it goes into lock screen mode, but these can be animated widgets. So Apple could say, we suggest that you support some kind of animation, or maybe they could do things like you can show the widgets, but they always have some kind of animated background. Like they could do something like that even, so that you're not displaying static images all the time on the screensaver. Yeah. I love this idea.
You're not suggesting that they fly all around the place, are you, Federico?
No. I'm just saying leave a gradient in the background and overlay the widgets on top of it. Something like that.
And, I imagine like they could float in and out. Like sometimes you see the widgets, sometimes they fade away. But also Apple understand how to limit OLED burn-in on their iPhones, right? Yes. They've worked. Yes. I think if I remember rightly, there was a thing about some elements moving ever so slightly in like a way that's almost imperceptible. Maybe this might be a fever dream, but I'm sure I remember something about like if you leave your phone on a home screen, it's like the elements do move, but not in necessarily a way that you would see to try and limit burn-in. But I've never heard of burn-in on iPhones.
Yeah, me neither.
Never heard.
No, I haven't either. That's true. That's true, and you can leave the screen on 24/7 if you want. I mean, if you want to do that.
And
interesting.
Depending on the type of user you are, you could use an app all the time. You know what I mean? Like just a certain app all the time. Like I'm kind of surprised that the keyboard hasn't burnt in on my iPhone at this point.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's up a lot, right? I mean,
all the time. Yeah.
I love this. No, I just love this idea. I would have never thought of it, but this is why we call the expert in, right?
That's why you need the expert. You know what I mean? You got to have the guy who's living and breathing tvOS 24/7.
We got to have the visionary on the show, showing us the path for tvOS, and the path is widgets.
I want to know, Myke, how would you fix the home screen? Because one of the things that bugs me most about the Apple TV, I don't know about you, but I've got a bunch of apps installed, a lot of games and things. They're just there, and I don't do anything with them. It's really only the top maybe 2 rows or so that I actually use, which are, the TV app and then a handful of other video streaming apps. And then once in a while, I'll go to something else.
Well, what I'll say is my points 1 and 2. So the idea of doing more to include content in the TV app and then also system-wide up next and stuff like that is actually the foundation for what I would like to see in, say, like tvOS 18. There are no apps anymore. Like, almost like a regression to the original tvOS. Like, let's be real. I'm sure that I would say something now and App Stories listeners are going to say, hey, I use this app or I play this game. I think ultimately people are using tvOS and Apple TV devices for video content, for streaming content of some description.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think tvOS could be better served into the future if it refocused on that, even if they do something which I think they might do, which is a much cheaper Apple TV, maybe a stick or something in the future, which would just be, this is pure video. And at that point, they just, if you're a video app, you can be on this device. Outside of that, you can't be, and you also have to integrate with the TV app. I would like to see, honestly, Apple just refocus TV OS on TV. Like, we made the joke, I've made this joke a bunch of times. Turns out the future of TV was not apps. The future of TV was just more streaming services.
Right.
They took a bet. and it was wrong, like it wasn't apps. People, you know what? People aren't shopping on Net-a-Porter on their Apple TV or searching for homes on Zillow on their Apple TV. Like,
Right.
they're using the devices that they use every day for that kind of stuff. They're personal devices rather than the TV, which is really a shared device, no matter what they might do about it. You know, like, and I know Apple have like the user profiles and stuff, but I'm going to assume for most families, they're not switching profiles and stuff like that on the Apple TV. You know, they are because so many apps have their profiles built within them, right? And of course, whilst the TV profiles and the app profiles are supposed to mesh together, of course, people don't integrate that, right? Like, you know, like Netflix aren't putting that into their app. So I think these are shared devices, and I would like to see them just refocus around streaming video and kind of start to get rid of some of the app stuff, which I then think could allow for them to more widely rethink the home screen.
I think that's a really good idea, although I would push back on one aspect of it. I think the idea of a cheaper stick that's very video focused is a great way for Apple to go. But I would love to see a higher end device that also focuses on one other category, and that is video games. I'm still holding out hope that there's a future for video games on the Apple TV. It's not now. I mean, we've got Apple Arcade, and right now all those games are treated as apps, and they're a separate tile, which I think is terrible. I think there should be a new app that is an arcade app that houses all video game content within it.
Yeah, I would be into that too, but that's Apple controlling it still, and that's what I think is fine. I do think that tvOS is a platform that they should just take a heavier hand in and just be realistic about who's going to use it, like developer-wise. And I think it would allow them to create a better customer experience if they were to do that, you know. But that's just my view on that. I think this device would be better served if it was more focused again, rather than it trying to be an app platform. Which, look, here's the deal, right? I know that there are people like, oh, it should be open. People should be able to make whatever apps they want from it. That's fine, and I understand that. But there isn't a market for it, though. Like, you can make your like, oh, I've made a Markdown text editor for Apple TV. No one's gonna buy it. Yeah, right. Like, that's the situation. I mean,
use a remote control for the keyboard.
Yeah, it's like similar with the Apple Watch. You know, I think of Apple Watch and tvOS similar to this. It's like, really, you have to be a developer of a certain type of application that speaks well to those devices. They are not multi-purpose devices like our iPhones or Macs and our iPads. They are more focused than that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have 2 more features for you.
Okay, number 4.
This one isn't so exciting. It's just better support for HomeKit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, HomeKit on Apple TV may as well honestly not exist. Like, you can watch cameras and access your scenes. Like, I don't really know why you would do anything if you're not going to even allow me to control.
Yeah.
No, it's really, really bad. I've never tried this, but I'm sure you can ask Siri to do things, right? I'm sure you can.
I do ask Siri to set up my blue scene, like blue lights at night with the remote just before watching something on the TV app. But that's all I do.
Yeah. But really, I think this should be a knock-on effect of just a wider refresh of home.
Yeah.
Which I think is in the future. And I hope that the Apple TV will benefit from whatever it is they do on iOS and iPadOS to make the home experience a better one.
Yeah, it's so strange that it acts as a hub, and it's perfect as a hub from a hardware standpoint, but from a software point of view, it really does very few things with HomeKit.
That is a really good point, John. It's hilarious, right? Like, it is the device that all of my other devices talk to, but I can't use it to easily control any of those devices.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
if I just want to turn on one light, there's no button anywhere for me to do that.
It's like a brain without a body, you know? Like it handles all the things, but it can actually do it itself. That's I don't know, it's weird. Yeah.
My final feature? I would like Apple to just straight up copy Amazon's X-ray feature.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So what I would like to be able to do is to just swipe up on my Apple Remote's touchpad and find out the names of all the actors on the screen. Mm-hmm. I want Shazam to tell me what song is currently playing. I want all of that information. I don't want to have to pause the content and ask Siri. I don't want to have to ask Siri in the audio dips. Like, I don't want any of that. Just show me. Tell me it's powered by Siri if you really want that. But, like, I just want to be able to swipe up, get all of that information. It's a great feature that Amazon has. And I, because this came to me recently when I was watching We Crashed, which has just a fantastic playlist.
Yes.
And I had to keep getting Shazam out on my phone, holding it up, getting the song, and then skipping back 15 seconds so I can get back to where I was supposed to be. So, I would just love Apple to just surface all of that information. They know who's in TV shows. I don't know exactly how Amazon do it. I don't know how human the process is for getting the X-ray data. But I feel like if machine learning is as smart as they tell me it is, they should be able to kind of just work that out, like facial recognition, all that kind of stuff.
They don't even need a new fancy name for this. They already sort of have this feature on iOS. It's called Visual Lookup. It's the thing that recognizes stuff in photos. And they could just say, and now we're bringing Visual Lookup to the TV app on tvOS. And now you can recognize songs and actors and other data in the movies and TV shows you're watching. Boom, done. That would be incredible.
Yeah. And then, you could integrate it into the player. So any app that uses the official TV player will just get this feature. So they don't need to build it themselves.
Right, and you could put in related content and things like that, and the buttons that you mentioned for quickly adding them to your queue. It would be a nice way to integrate it all, and that gives their partners a reason to use it too, as you said, because that'll incentivize them. Yep, that's a great idea.
Why are you not in charge of tvOS?
I know, right? I'm thinking about tvOS more than anybody else.
You're holding out for more money, right? They've given you an offer, and you're holding out for more money.
I
know
have
you.
6 more features, but you got to call me. I give all this away for free,
Yeah, I love it. I want that tvOS 16. How many of these do you think?
You're not going to get it, boys.
How many of these do you think we're going to get at WWDC?
None of them.
None of them. Not even one out of 5? Oh,
I think you'll only get anything if we get a full home refresh this year.
Yeah, I think that's the one that's the most likely, because I think there's a good chance we'll get a home refresh. But beyond that, I guess I'm sadly in agreement with you on that, Myke.
I think they will add stuff. They always add stuff. I think a lot of the stuff they add to tvOS is dependent on there being other things in iOS and iPadOS. Like spatial audio gets its way over and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I have no. It's not that I'm saying it is a dead platform. It isn't. They do keep adding things. They're adding, they added eARC, for example, which was a big surprise to me. Like, I would never have expected them to add a feature like that, which is where you can have via HDMI 2.1, I think it is, you have to have an eARC port, an eARC-enabled HDMI port. You can have your HomePods play any sound from your TV, so you can have your PlayStation route through to your HomePod, for example. So you can use them as actual real rate speakers for anything. But they do add stuff, but a lot of the things that I have mentioned, I think, are maybe outside of the current scope of tvOS with what they're looking to do to it or with it. But I would love to see any of these things, any of these features, any of these 5 features, and I'll be a very happy man.
Well, thank you for joining us, Michael.
Pleasure.
tvOS expert. Because you do this all the time, and we do this to our guests, where can people find you?
Well, I mean, obviously now I'm sure people are super excited about my upcoming tvOS review,
right?
Which you'll be able to find on Connected on Relay FM,
obviously,
which also includes Federico and sometimes John. So if you enjoy app stories, you'll probably like
Chances
Connected.
are high.
You can find me there.
Chances are high.
Chances are high. John will appear.
Yeah. And what about the Friday Keyboard Club? What's going on over there?
Oh yeah, I stream. Yeah, I stream every week at myke.live. It's on Twitch. And I mostly am taking apart, rebuilding keyboards and stuff like that. I did recently extract a Touch ID sensor out of a Magic Keyboard. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I have it.
Be careful with those ribbon cables.
That's so small, man. It was a nightmare, but fun.
All right, that's it for today's episode of App Stories. I want to extend a special thanks once again to Alex Guyot and Myke Hurley for joining us for today's episode to talk more about watchOS and tvOS. If you want to hear a really geeky discussion about some of the behind-the-scenes back-end development work that drives Club Mac Stories and now Automation April, join us by subscribing to App Stories Plus. Today, Alex talked all about how he extended the technologies underlying Calliope, which runs the Club and Automation April. You can learn more about App Stories Plus by going to appstories.plus. The version of the show that has bonus content every week, comes out a day early, is released in high bitrate audio, and is ad-free. I also want to thank our two sponsors for today's show. That's SourceGraph and Instabug. You can find me and Federico online. Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI on both Twitter and Instagram, and I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.